Hello guys, Crispy here, welcome back to another video. In this one, my friends, I'm going to be testing a GeForce GTX 1080 Ti 11GB GPU in Assassin's Creed Mirage. This one is a Gigabyte version of the card, Triple Fan Edition. We're running it with the latest Nvidia drivers, of course, and you can see all of its specs right here in Tech PowerUp's GPU Z 2017 card, and it has 11 gigs of GDDR5X, as I told you. Over on the left, we're pairing it with the i5-13600K without the E-cores enabled, because that introduces a lot of stuttering in Assassin's Creed Mirage. And I also overclocked the CPU to 5.6 GHz. Over on the memory tab, we're using 32 GB of DDR5 6000 MHz RAM in dual channel, and let's get right into it. Shall we? First of all, let's go over the settings. As usual, I'm playing at 1080p first. We're also going to test 1440p and 4K, 100% resolution scale, and we're using the high settings preset at the moment without motion blur and without the adaptive quality right here. So it's native 1080p high settings. And look at this. It's getting very similar FPS to the RTX 3060 if I'm not mistaken. Wow. Actually, it might be slightly faster than that card, which is pretty interesting to see, of course, but kind of expected considering the older engine that this game utilizes. So, of course, it will run well on Pascal GPUs like the GTX 1080 Ti, which is a beast of a card. I love this GPU, my friends. Anyway, as you can see, you can have a really great experience. Whoa, so many people with camels here and one with a horse. Like, what are you doing? You're an imposter. I'm gonna hijack you. Oh, yes. Okay. Okay, come on, let's go. Oh, boy, it's Roach, actually. I totally forgot. It's Roach. We're finally seeing Roach here. Why did you... Come on, buddy. Little Basim, still don't know the name of the guy. Anyway, over here, it's one of the most intensive areas in the entire game, at least that I've come across so far. And I have played it for about 2 hours of the main story, as well as walked around pretty much the entire city, you know. And as you can see, it is dropping into the lower 80s, actually. I think it dropped into the 70s already. Yep, 78 right there. But, I mean, this is always well above 60 FPS, even if you come across a little bit more intensive of an area than this one. It is gonna be buttery smooth on a GTX 1080 Ti. Just remember to disable E-cores if you have an Intel 13th or 12th gen CPU with E-cores, because that introduces a ton of stuttering and it actually makes things unplayable a little bit. Not so much on Nvidia cards for some reason. There's a little stutter right there. Doesn't solve 100% of the stutters, by the way. But yeah, we'll still have some stuttering issues, especially when we get to the river area of the game. But overall, you won't come across stuttering issues very often if you have the E-cores disabled. And with the E-cores enabled, it stutters every like 10 seconds or 5 seconds, which is extremely annoying. Now, if you notice, the GPU utilization is fluctuating a little bit, going down to like 95%, 93% even at times. That's not a CPU bottleneck because I tested this exact same configuration with the i5 P-cores with 5.6 GHz on the RTX 4070 Ti, and it got around like 130, 140 frames per second. It's something else, all right? It's just normal fluctuation on the GPU usage side of things, and, well, we shouldn't really worry about that. It's running flawlessly after all. Now, if you want more FPS, there's always FSR 2 there. You can set it to quality. It still looks reasonably good, you know. Actually, it's probably one of the best implementations of FSR 2 that I've seen in the recent times, but it only gets you like 10-15 more FPS. The image is slightly, very slightly blurrier, and you can notice some pixelation effects sometimes around moving things, especially your character, you know. So please. What the hell? I wouldn't really use FSR because it was already a perfect experience at 1080p native. It's just a little bit more high refresh rate of an experience like this, but it's a single player title, not even a first person one, so I'm completely fine with 90 FPS, as like 99.9% of the people will be. So we're back to native resolution here, and next we should bump it up to 1440p, make things a little bit more intensive. Alright, here we have it, 2560 by 1440, 100% resolution scale with the high settings and TAA native. Look at those FPS. It's actually doing a better job than the Arc A770, I believe. right? That GPU dropped a little bit from 60 FPS, stuttering slightly here, by the way. 11 FPS, 1% lows, that's terrible, but we just started, maybe it was still applying things from 1440p. I don't know, now it's smooth again. But let's try to get to that really intensive area again. It will probably drop into the 50s there. I don't know where I am, though. I get really lost in this game. It's a round city, after all. It's made for El Crespo to be lost. I actually expected it to be a little bit worse than this at 1440, especially after testing the ARC A770 as well as the RTX 3060. Sometimes 3060 is very similar in performance to this one, and I think that's kind of what we're seeing here. It is still a little bit faster than 3060. But yeah, given that this game is Intel sponsored, I really thought the ARC GPU with 16 gigabytes of VRAM and it's close to 1080 Ti performance in a lot of titles would get more FPS than the 1080 Ti, but that's not what we're seeing here. We're seeing a 6-year-old GPU, almost 7-year-old GPU, beating the RK770 in Assassin's Creed Mirage. Why is this Intel sponsored? Like, it doesn't run better on Intel GPUs, and it doesn't run better on Intel CPUs either, because you gotta disable eCores for it not to stutter. Anyway, around here, it still hasn't dropped. Are you serious? It needs to drop. It needs to drop. Come on. There we go. 50. Oh, there's Bob. There's Bob. Oh, you're gonna die, guys. We're gonna die. Beautiful gun race, by the way. Oh, boy. Okay, come on. Go, whoa. Bob's kicks are just so powerful, dude. It's totally unfair. 59 once again. Still, it only drops slightly, and this isn't really an overclocked version of the 1080 Ti. So if you have like an Asus ROG Strix or an MSI Gaming X 1080 Ti with overclock out of a box, even without manually OCing, you should be seeing a few more FPS, like 3 to 4 more frames per second, which is gonna be amazing! Oh my god, Bob wins again. But what if you want even higher FPS? Let's set it to FSR2 on quality. This still looks very good, and it seems like we're getting close FPS to what we saw at 1080p native resolution. Maybe slightly lower than that, but that means that it will stay above 60 FPS 100% of the time, obviously. There are some bugs with the shadows, though, using these settings. But even with that shadow LOD issue that this game has, it's not really an issue, it's just how it was designed. It still looks good overall, you know. I wouldn't really have a problem playing on high settings. You actually gotta look for those imperfect shadows, like right there on that wall, to notice that something's wrong with the image. So overall, not many people will notice that, I think. Maybe I just ruined it for everybody, though, because maybe now they will be looking for it. I'm sorry if that's the case. But anyway, as you saw, it did not drop from 60 FPS. It got slightly more pixelated, especially in vegetation areas, but still passable, for sure. Still a good implementation of FSR2. I just wish we could have DLSS on the 1080 Ti. Imagine that. Honestly, I think I would actually play at 1440p native with high settings and ultra high textures, because it looks and plays very well. It only dips to 59, so who cares, right? Alright, lastly, for the high settings, we got 3840 by 2160, 100% resolution scale. It's 4K, high settings with ultra high textures, and TAA set to native. And alright, it can still provide a decent experience apparently, guys. 40-ish, 50s, yeah, low 40s at times. Down there is probably gonna dip into the 30s, but this is not terrible performance whatsoever. If you told me before this game came out and I took a look at the performance that this would be playable on a GTX 1080 Ti at 4K high settings, with always above 30 frames per second, I would have said you're crazy. There's no way Assassin's Creed Mirage from Ubisoft will be that smooth and playable. But it is, my friends, it is. Over here near the water, it gets some stuttering issues. It always does in every single GPU that I threw at it. I've seen this issue. The first time you come across this river in particular, it just drops like crazy. That frame time graph is not really that smooth anymore, by the way. We're seeing a lot of little variations, but those aren't noticeable. It's probably because of the 40 FPS themselves, you know. I think, however, that I would probably play this with an FPS lock, maybe set to like 40 FPS or 35, because that's going to become even more consistent, of course. The frame time will be completely smooth then, and yeah, it will probably improve your experience, especially if you have a controller or something. And this is a game where I think it runs pretty well on a controller. Over here, there we go, 40. All right, that's dropping less than I expected. 37 and 38. Wow. That's pretty good, 1080 Ti, not gonna lie. You can, after all, lock it to 35, as I told you, and have a 35 locked FPS experience all of the time, which is gonna be pretty good for a 1080 Ti at 4K. But we still have an ace up our sleeves, my friends. It's FSR2 on quality, gonna increase the sharpness here to 69%, just because it's the perfect number, obviously. It actually looks slightly sharper, and now it's right around 60 frames per second. Look at this. Okay, now it's dropping, of course, because we're looking in this direction and it's very intensive. But hey, it is certainly a lot smoother than it was before. I think I would probably lock it at this point at 50 FPS or maybe 45 FPS. It's way smoother than 30 or 35. And with a controller, maybe add a little bit of motion blur, it would probably feel really good. All right, Bob, it's now. It's now. All right, the power of the 1080 Ti is going to help me. Come on, there we go. Yes, we hit him again. No, my God, I was pressing Alt there. Nothing worked. Gosh, he has throwing knives and stuff. No. Come on. No. Why don't you dodge him? No, that's cheating. That's just cheating, dude. See why I hate Bob, guys? Over here, we're getting like close to 60. It's not going to be a 60 FPS average experience. Maybe if you overclock the card, or if you have one of those factory overclocked models, it will stay at 60 FPS most of the time, or at least on average, you know, 62, 63 average. But here with a stock version of this 1080 Ti, or close to a stock version, well, this is what you can expect. It's still a great experience, you know. The fidelity is very close to native 4K resolution here with FSR2 on quality. It feels smooth because it's close to 60 FPS, and especially if you're using a G-Sync monitor, it's gonna feel pretty good. Shut up. Stop pointing at me and putting your hands on my... What are you doing? Shut up. Get out of here. All right. Let's stop it there, my friends, and let's play at ultra-high settings at 1080p resolution now. Alright guys, 1080p 100% resolution scale using the ultra-high settings preset. The only things I changed was the motion blur, turned it off, and the adaptive quality, so it's at native resolution. And at native 1080p ultra-high, things are much more intensive. Wow, we were getting 69 FPS. That was almost perfect. Alright, I just started counting the FPS. Still feels really smooth, guys, but I mean, it's close to 60 FPS at times, so it might actually drop here and there. Okay, so it does dip into the 50s. 57 there, 58. Even at 1080p, guys, ultra high settings, this is way more intensive than high, and it doesn't really look all that different. Let's take a look at those shadows. Yeah, the shadows do look way better than they did on high, especially at the distance. But again, that's a single setting that you can adjust. Still, if you are interested in playing the game maxed out on a GTX 1080 Ti, you still can if you have a 1080p monitor. It's gonna work. It's gonna dip into the 50s sometimes, every now and again, but it's not a major deal. It's only in worst case scenarios once again. And again, if you have that G-Sync monitor, it's probably gonna make up for it and achieve a pretty smooth experience anyways, even with a couple of drops here and there.
there. What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components.
'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stilino components. 'What do we have here? Leather, Stil Oh, I like components, actually. I'm using components right here. Actually, I just got a new component. Look at this, my friends. Look at this. It's a 7950X. Finally, I got one of those. It's gonna be great for rendering purposes, as well as test higher-end GPUs, you know. I'm finally gonna have a high-end AMD platform from current generation. Let's enable FSR2, I guess, on quality. 90 FPS, close to that. It's definitely a bigger improvement, I think, than what we've seen at 1080p high. When I enabled FSR there, I mean, we are what, like 10, 15 FPS more than native? And here we're getting we're getting 15, 20 FPS more than native. That's interesting. So FSR2, come on, come on, come on. Oh, why are you so fat, Bob? Seriously. Okay, it's now, guys. It's now. It needs to be... No, never mind. I am very low HP already. Gosh. Now we're at 2560 by 1440, and I'm gonna disable the FSR now. Okay, so native resolution, 100% resolution scale, and okay, it's getting very close to 60 FPS, but it's already dropping, guys. So it's not gonna be a perfect experience, but still, I think the averages will be above 60. So it's a little bit better than what we saw at 4K resolution with the high settings and FSR2 on quality, and that was still playable, so of course this is also still playable. Also, I'm really sorry about the screen tearing. That's because of the capture card. It doesn't work properly when VRR is enabled. Alright, so far so good. It's actually keeping up really well with 60 plus FPS in these enclosed streets, you know, very short and claustrophobic streets. Yes, that's what I meant there. Okay, I'm trying to go to the other area. Well, it will inevitably drop, as you already know, obviously, but I mean, I actually expected worse this time around, you know, because at 1080p we saw a big drop in performance coming from high to ultra, and here at 1440p we went from what, like 70 FPS maybe 70 to 80 to 60-ish most of the time, and 50, like 55 to 65 most of the time, I guess, which is pretty reasonable, I think. Once again, it's nothing short of amazing that an almost 7-year-old GPU is playing the new Assassin's Creed title at 1440p ultra settings, native res with 61 FPS average. What about FSR2? Will it put it above 60 FPS the entire time? Maybe not. Yeah, 66 FPS right here, so it would definitely drop at least slightly from 60 whenever we are in those little bushes that are extremely intensive, and I won't really come across anymore in this video because I'm completely lost again, and I don't want to reload the previous save because this is probably it for this video, guys. Oh, finally! We got Bob with the first hit! Fat Bob is dead, my friend. I'm actually gonna carry him with me. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. I'm gonna feed you to the jacks now, Bob. Stop doing that. The jacks need to be fed. Wait, I think we're getting close to that other area, guys. Maybe. But I don't promise anything. I'm probably not gonna get there. Still, over here is really intensive as well because it has a ton of people around us and it's getting 65 FPS. Still very good, again, and on a native 1440p monitor, especially at 27 inches, you won't really notice the pixelation from FSR too much. So I think it's gonna look pretty good overall still. Alright, now we're at 3840 by 2160, guys, and, well, gonna disable FSR, although we really need it at this resolution and settings with the ultra-high settings. I'm also noticing that these spikes right here are happening in this frame time graph a lot more often than other GPUs, probably because it's older, drivers are not really optimized for it, maybe. But again, inside of the game, it still feels pretty good. What is this? Core challenge completed. I don't know what I did, but all right. Okay. Okay. Yeah, no. Unless it does not drop from 30 FPS at all, and you're fine with 30 FPS locked with a controller for like a console-like experience, for example, I won't really recommend this, guys. Yeah, look at this. 37 there. It's also starting to stutter a little bit more at 4K. I'm not sure why that is. Maybe because the FPS are lower. You know, the frame time just gets a bit more inconsistent. Because VRAM-wise, we are well under the 11 gigabyte frame buffer. We're at 9.2 gigabytes at the moment. And look at that! It doesn't even drop too much right here. 32 is the minimum. Although the 1% lows are at 29 because of the little fluctuations in the frame time graph again. But yeah, that's crazy. You can play Assassin's Creed Mirage at 4K Ultra natively with the 1080 Ti. What? Lastly, it is time for FSR2 on quality at 4K resolution. And once again, it's slightly softer than a native 4K. You can notice the difference, but you can get used to it pretty easily, I think. I'm sorry for eating your food and stuff. And it's getting like down into the 40s still. I'm using this on a 42-inch monitor, and I would probably prefer the native resolution with 30 or 35 FPS locked, or maybe even 40 FPS locked at high instead of ultra high. But on a 32-inch monitor, maybe this would look really good with FSR2. It's certainly very passable already. I just got used to seeing the... There we go! No! Wait. No, stop! You! Oh, God damn it! The cheats! Man! Anyway, ultra high at 4K is just a bit too much for a 1080 Ti, in my opinion. Unless you want to use FSR and all you want is 40 FPS. So, yeah. Otherwise, this is great, actually. Thanks very much for watching this video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you in the next one very soon. As always, love you all. Bye-bye.